A2IM, the collective voice of independent music.
Hi, I'm Steve Kline. I'm the COO of Better Noise Music, and welcome to the panel. Why is, how do I get on a playlist? The wrong question. Also joining us, we have Jen Masset.
Hi, I'm Jen Masset
Sorry.
It's okay. From Spotify. I'm the head of independent label support. So I globally help indie labels navigate their opportunities on the business side at Spotify.
Great. Okay. And we have John Frank.
Hey, Steve. I'm John Frank, and I'm joining here from ADA. I am the EVP of Commerce and Marketing based in New York City.
Great. Welcome. And we have Ian Harrison.
Hi, I'm the general manager of Hopeless Records, and I oversee our marketing and promotion and operations worldwide.
Excellent. All right, so here we are. Let's figure out why getting on a playlist is the wrong question. When you're developing an artist or putting out a song, what are the key incremental steps you take before you take something to streaming? I guess we could start with John. If you have an act that has had, maybe it's their second album cycle, or you have a new song that's coming out, before you take it to streaming, what kind of steps do you want to take to in order to get some sort of features or engagement?
So I believe with a record like that, or actually with any record that we talk about, A&R drives the record. I believe A&R and marketing sit in the front of the car and ride shotgun together. The correct place to start, in my humble opinion, is, what is the point of view on the record? What's the story we're trying to tell? Is the consumer the same as the last time around? And what are the marketing drivers and marketing build out that we're looking to put around the artists and around that phase of the cycle? So the first thing that I always look at, the majority of my background is in marketing and content creation and fan acquisition and brand building. So even though now I oversee commerce, what I'm always looking for is, what are the marketing drivers that a label or an artist have in place around a song, an album, a project, whatever those things may be. So it's really sitting down and putting that roadmap together and having a timeline, a content plan, a digital media plan. If there's radio involved, if there's touring involved, kind of putting everything out on the table, working through that, and then putting together something that's cohesive, and sharing that with DSPs. So that's the very first place to start. I also believe with cycles getting shorter and shorter and setup time getting shorter and shorter in the kind of the hip hop world that we live in now, that is not always possible. For the great majority of things that have the benefit of time, having that plan in hand minimally, 6 weeks out, ideally 3 months out, is absolutely the way to go. The other part of that too is, how do you present that plan thoughtfully to DSPs, and how do you set realistic, scalable goals for your artist, and how do you cater to that DSP, and what is your plan to drive your consumer to that DSP, and what is the value proposition for them? So I look at a combination of all those things. We try to do that instead of distribution. Is certainly more challenging given the volume of releases that come at you every week. ADA releases on a given week, sometimes 200 plus records a week. So in our conversations with labels, these are the things that I look for, and these are the conversations that I'm really looking to have and help on a creative level with. And that's how I first would start the conversation before I even get to the point of fill in the blank. DSP, what are the playlist opportunities for this song?
So just a question, would you put the song out while you're doing that, or would you do all those things prior? Did you say you would do it 3 months prior, leading into it, before you would drop the song?
I don't think there's a one size fits all formula, Steve. I think it varies from artist to artist and genre to genre. You know, sometimes you don't have the benefit of having time, and sometimes you're catching up to a record. Other times when you do have the benefit of the time, especially in the alternative rock lifestyle, kind of heavier music world, hopefully there is the benefit of time because those things are tied into, not at the very moment, but they're tied into touring, tour holes, activations, D2C. There's a number of other things happening that are just not related to playlisting itself. So there's really not a one size fits all. We can look at a couple of specific records if you'd like, or we can look at a couple of specific proof of concept, but I think they're all gonna, for everybody on this panel, gonna vary pretty differently.
Right. Got it. Ian, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say on our end, we're generally not holding back records from streaming, but we are more commonly being careful with when we approach certain people about certain types of stories. So, you know, we might, you know, put something brand new up in the Spotify pitch tool, for example, but it's not going to be on our list of, you know, a few questions we might get to ask an editor from time to time. You know, we're going to wait for that story to build. And when you're working in a genre like we do, primarily rock, but not entirely, there's a whole bunch of feeder playlists that are either official or even non-official that can help build that story while a band's a baby. You know, we get to work with artists who are super big all the way to the guys that just graduated high school and nothing's going on yet. And when we're in that position, you know, if it's like a heavy rock band, let's just try to get anything going. Small playlists, who's a power user, even on a fan basis that has a playlist that's got some followers who might be interested in that. That's the level of work we're doing there. And also, something I don't think gets talked about enough is trying to build your following on the platform. So for Spotify example, how are we getting those followers? Are we engaging people? How are we getting those listens? How are we getting those associations that are going to feed the algorithmic side, which in all honesty is more powerful than the editorial side in terms of just brute numbers, at least for us. So we're trying to raise all that stuff up at once. You know, we wouldn't complain if our debut artist the month after we signed them ended up on Rock This, but you know what? It probably won't work out for the band, you know, because they're not ready for an opportunity like that. And certainly some stuff can move very, very fast, and that's great. And when it's happening, you should just run and go with it and not edit it. But we'd rather put the artist in a position to win. So if, at least in rock, that Rock This moment is probably one of the bigger ones you could have, at least on Spotify. When are we going to get that? And when's the right time to ask for that trigger to be pulled, if that's possible, and make sure that for the DSP that it's good for them too, because we all know, we're all partners. It does nobody any good if we really try to do the hard sell on an editor or somebody on the label services side and they put something in and then it just fails. Because nowadays everybody's looking at the data. So your relationship might get something in, but the data is going to bounce it out almost immediately. So really just about picking that right spot to go for whatever level, not anything. We're going for stuff right off the bat, but it's real small.
Yeah, to echo what Ian said, I think you make a really good point, Ian, about the follow concept around this. You know, to take that a step further, I believe, you know, for developing bands as well, growing your socials with real fans and acquiring real fans, remarketing to them, reseeding them with content, reserving up content. If you've got a developing embryonic band, I believe that if you grow 10,000 Instagram followers and they're absolutely real and evangelists for your band, that is tremendously powerful and can also influence your follow count on Spotify, for example. We spend a lot of time trying to get labels to activate moments, whether it's tweet to unlock, experiential pre-save moments where you can win prizing around pre-saves, in the hopes of gaining a larger follower count along the way. Because ultimately, I believe that is part of the longer retention value proposition for artists and the long tail of their business. In the same way you would do it for YouTube subscriber counts as well. So very, very powerful and very good point there.
Well,
100%. Totally.
We'd like to engage, our artists need to engage their fan base, grow their fan base, and be able to activate their fan base and drive them to stream, right? Or buy tickets and t-shirts and that kind of stuff. So, you know, on that note too, Jen, the value proposition Is that good? Is that effective when artists, because otherwise it's all up to you. We can't leave it up to Spotify to break our artists, right?
I mean, we can expose the music, but for people to actually care about it, it's got to be great music, great marketing, great sort of cultural moment. And the followers are like the most valuable, right? If you have somebody who is actively listening to your music, has clicked that follow button, who is just waiting for the next music to come, then when they hear it in a playlist or when they see it on a shelf, if they are exposed to it, of course they're going to listen to it and they're going to save it and they're going to listen to it 10 years from now. Right? That's like way more valuable than, 1 week a new music Friday, where maybe they're just clicking through and checking out the new music. And who knows what they're going to do with it a week from now, a month from now, or 10 years from now. So really thinking about how do you grow your fan base one fan at a time in a real and meaningful way. That kind of marketing is just fuel on the fire for a playlist ad. Right? You end up in a playlist and then it just cycles from there. Then it's like a sort of, an extra tick in the box of being something that's going to be important to that fan.
Right. So what, Jen, this is for you. What is the most effective way to communicate all the initiatives that we might be doing off platform to market our artists?
I mean, the playlist pitching tool is pretty awesome. I worked a lot on that when I started at Spotify, and our team is really, really proud of the number of artists that we've been able to add to playlists for the first time, thanks to that tool. It's the first kind of scalable way that 100+ editors around the world that, work for Spotify in our 79 offices, 79 countries around the world. And, they get that information, but so does the algorithm, right? So it kind of feeds in, it says, here's the focus track, here's the instruments, here's the kinds of, basically telling the kind of people that would like to hear this sort of music, or, fans of this may also like that. But then you also get that great like context box where you can really, like, as the editor's listening to it, can read through and find out, like, why is this going to matter to people? Is it about the lyrics? Is it the fact that it just got picked up in this massive sync and it's going to be this like emotional moment for people when they hear it, because they're going to connect it to this other thing? Is it, exploding on TikTok? Is it, YouTube success? Is it, on tour when that's going to happen? Are these the types of things that our editors need to be aware of so they can isolate like which countries to start it in, which types of fans are going to listen to it? That playlist pitching tool, I think, what was the last count? 76,000 artists were playlists for the first time because they were discovered by an editor in the playlist pitching tool. Massively, massively important to them.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So Ian, let's say, you've done all that. The song is out and you do get a playlist. You do get playlisted. What happens then? Is it, you're done?
Possibly not as much as you might think. That's, to us, that's really when the real work starts. That's when you are, the light's being shown upon you, and hopefully you have the pieces in place. And for some artists, it could be you've built to this over a long period of time, or for some artists, especially more in the hip hop world, this happens. There's just a cultural moment. This might be a very brand new artist, but things are rolling, and that's fine too. But this is your moment to take advantage of that spotlight. So how are you going to talk to all of these new fans that you presumably could have? I don't think you should assume that they are fans yet. We see, for as much as we can tell, pretty poor retention from playlist ads. So the listeners are going to go way up, but then once that playlist runs its course, if nothing else happens, your numbers are going to go right back down to where they were before, maybe a little bit higher, but not something significant. So what are you going to do to take advantage of that? And a lot of that happens off platform. It happens in the social area. It happens in using that support to get other things. And this is just old school marketing. The platforms have changed, but this is the same stuff people have done for the past 50 years in our business. It's like, oh, I got this radio ad, let me call the magazine. Oh, we got this magazine cover, let me make sure that this retail shop knows about it. And you're just building and building and building. So if you do get one of these playlist ads, you should be thinking about what's my next step. And that might be another playlist on platform, but the bigger opportunity we think is off platform. So sure, like let's circle back with the editor and say, hey, the numbers we're seeing look pretty good. Do they look good on your end? Maybe it should move up, or maybe it should get a chance at a better playlist. But the bigger stuff is like, let's approve some more marketing money. And this seems like this is going. Maybe we do take this to radio now. Like, for example, at our company, radio typically lags behind streaming. So if we're seeing something take off, like for example, in the heavy space, if it's getting rock this, if it's getting big playlists, if it's getting breaking rock, all those things, that's what we're going to go out to radio, that story, not usually the other way around. And then once you get something going, those two things kind of feed each other. You know, a rock this ad is going to help a radio ad is going to help keep you on that playlist, and on and on and on.
Right. It's all part of the marketing mix and the ecosystem. And going back to what John was saying, I think, you know, it feeds into what you just said too. I mean, the more of a fan base you have before you get playlist, or even while you have a feature, and the more active and passionate they are, the better it's going to perform. You know, you're going to be able to drive those people to the playlist to listen, and that can in turn trigger algorithms, you know, on the platform. So, any thoughts on that, John?
No, I mean, I think Ian nailed that. I mean, again, it's like, I can't overemphasize this enough. If you're hoping that a playlist is going to break your band, that's likely not going to happen. Mm-hmm. You need to actually really hunker down and create marketing moments and activations and a real roadmap that's going to lead to a larger volume of streaming. And doing those things greatly varies from artist to artist. And this, for some artists, it's really challenging, especially for developing ones. Like, how do you turn on the engine of the car where there's nothing to turn on? Yeah. You know, and that's what I like to refer to as granular artist digital development. You know, and building new fans out of nothing. So it's deeply challenging. Yeah. But I think Ian nailed that.
Yeah, it also seems too, you know, Ian, you talked about getting on a big playlist, and then if the song doesn't engage the way the other songs on platform on that playlist are engaging, you're going to get pushed down or kicked off, right? Mm-hmm. So it really does make sense. I mean, Jen, does it from where you sit? Is it better to get on a smaller playlist if you're a smaller artist, maybe, or just let kind of nature take its course and do whatever we can do off platform to converge and activate the audience?
I mean, our editors are, you know, trying to find a home for each song, right? And sometimes those big looks are the worst thing that you can get, because if it's not familiar enough to be in a rock this or a rap caviar, right? If it doesn't sound like it should be there yet, because it's not quite familiar, it hasn't been around, it's not like that sound yet, then it's going to fall off, and it's going to like have a high skip rate, or a high, you know, it's going to just not be the right place for it. It's going to disappear. I heard Brittany Schaefer in our Nashville office, and maybe this comes better from somebody in Nashville, but she once referred to our editors as more like farmers than gatekeepers. And I just think that's a great way to think about the role of the editor, right? They're trying to find the right place for each song to grow and to meet more listeners and to hopefully have them listen to it, enjoy it. There's things happening off platform, and then they can grow into a fan, right? But you have to start from one place and kind of grow it from there. And I think if you're not thinking of your marketing that way, then it's hard for us to sort of be in it with you, right? And to just sort of help that journey and help it grow and blossom into all that it can be.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, look, their jobs are to keep people engaged and keep them on platform, happily entertained, right? And it's more than just one big playlist. It's more than just rap caviar and rock this. I mean, there are a lot of smaller, more nuanced, niched playlists, and that's where you have the more active, probably user, I think, on some of the smaller ones. But you want to get those people first, right? You want to
definitely
get more fan, and then build concentrically from there. So, yeah.
And then to answer your question, as far as like after release, once, you know, things are happening and all the off, you know, maybe you put in your playlist pitch before, and then the track comes out, and then how do you kind of circle back to it? A lot of people try to like kind of circle back, and they're like, I just got 1 million plays on the song, or I got 200,000 overnight. And it's like, but they're all coming from our playlists. Like we want to see something that's more kind of balanced, where people are coming onto platform and looking for this, or, you know, it's in a feeder playlist, but it has a high save rate, you know, or it's a lean back experience, but people are really, you know, enjoying it. And then there starts to be more kind of artist profile engagement from there. Those types of things you can push through your distributor, or, you know, to the sort of artist label marketing team to be sure that, you know, artist label partnerships can kind of help from there. Something like a TikTok explosion, you know, these things can happen overnight where all of a sudden you have, you know, 1 million plays. Mm-hmm. Those are things where you have to reach out to artist label partnerships and let them know. But you will see that the algorithm reacts almost immediately, that as soon as people are really going to that page and engaging with the content, that the algorithm starts to kind of cycle from there, and then our systems will detect it. But if it's extremely timely, like I just got a sync license for this big thing and it's happening tomorrow, you know, flagging those things for artist label partnerships is really helpful.
Gotcha. John, question for you. So you have a song, you've done all the setup, the marketing, you've got some feature playlisting, you're seeing engagement, it's doing everything you want it to do, but you have another song scheduled to come out by the same artist. How do you deal with that? Does that cannibalize opportunities on the streaming platforms? How does that? How do you work with under situations like that?
I think every case is different, Steve, to that end. And again, it really depends on what the goal is of the other record. This is something super common in hip hop. It's becoming more and more common in non-hip hop circles. I mean, for years now, you know, an artist would put out a number of songs. In between those songs would be the quote unquote radio single, and put out more songs on top of it. And the way I look at those other records are, usually you want them to be marketing records, and there's no downside in having other music out there while you're working your quote unquote main single, for a number of reasons. One, it drives additional engagement and discovery to your artist. It increases your monthly your monthly listeners on Spotify, if you do it the right way. And again, it's all marketing. I don't think one record can take away from the other. I would be pretty mindful though in that conversation if you are well into, like, let's say there's a radio record. I mean, there's many different instances of this, right? However, if you're coming on top of a radio record that is working and moving rapidly, how that other record comes in and is presented and dropped into a DSP ecosystem, conversations around expectations and around lean in from the DSP and explaining what the other record is, I think is also critically important, because you don't want to cannibalize your own slot. I'm seeing a number of lifestyle labels that I'm not going to name out loud that are putting out songs every 2 weeks, you know, as unlocking what we used to call Instagram tracks going to an album release. And they're looking for visibility and playlisting on all the songs. And that is not, one, it's not realistic, but I also think it doesn't help the artists, because there needs to be a focus around it. And the other records need to exist for a reason other than simply we're putting out a song because the artist wants to put it out. And for another reason other than we're trying to get excitement created around the larger body of work. To me, that's no longer a reason. Back in the day, when we lived in the iTunes pre-order Instagram world, which I guess is 5-6 years behind us now at this point, that was one type of marketing. I don't think that marketing should be commonplace anymore, and it shouldn't be the expectation either. I think it's really, really defining what that other record is and what we're going to do with it. I'm speaking as if I'm still at a label, is really the key thing here to consider.
All that John said, and we talk a lot with our marketing and promo teams about, like, what purpose is this song going to serve? You know, because we have a few different audiences while we're in a lead up, right? DSPs are an audience. Editors and people at the DSPs are an audience. The fans are an audience. There's different types of fans that are engaged on different levels. So we do try to make sure that, you know, say, for example, we got our first single's out. It's on Rock This. It's doing great. We're at radio. There's all this stuff. Let's probably not put out another song that could have been that song. You know, perhaps there's a more fan fan-friendly track that doesn't have those mainstream opportunities, that should come out now. So it can feed the hyper-engaged fan who is already finished and consumed the first track weeks ago. But then we have this whole other group of people who haven't even heard it yet. So
Right.
it is about balancing those things out. And then you got to mix in artist expectations too. They want certain types of songs out. So it is a balance. And I think that the DSPs have gotten a lot better at listening to the plan. You know, I think maybe a few years ago that was scarier for us. And now I think that the communication, especially with Spotify and Apple and the bigger players, we can go to them and say, hey, this is what this song is. This is the one we want to focus on. These are some other things that are going to come out, and here's our hopes. And anything could change, but that open line of communication is best. And I realize not everybody has those lines of communication, but I would say if you don't have those lines of communication necessarily, you probably don't have that problem. And you should focus on fan building at that point rather than complaining about your access.
Right. It's also, Ian, why I call those records marketing records, because ultimately there should be marketing goals around them versus simply releasing another song to quote unquote create excitement. To me, that's not a reason to put out a record anymore. If you have to define what creating excitement actually means in today's marketplace, I think it's really important. And again, there's certainly not a one size fits all, and it greatly varies from genre to genre. Back in the day, I used to try to encourage rock bands to release, and I worked with a lot of lifestyle music as well, release the banger you've been holding it back, release it 10 days before the album drops, which is very much of a hip hop move, and I still see labels doing that. And then ultimately that song gets playlisting and the main song they're looking for may get left behind. And then it creates all sorts of confusion at the DSP level and us having to pull back things and over explain the purpose of having another song in the marketplace. So I, now that I'm on the distribution side, I encourage labels to really think that through and be very thoughtful in their marketing approach.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's like, what are your expectations? Are you using it to raise awareness for the artist, or maybe trigger, release radar, something like that?
Right.
Gotcha. So, Jen, have you seen any particular off-platform initiatives that kind of got people inside the building excited? Are there anything in particular that comes to mind?
I mean, there's lots of unique moments. It's like every track is different, right? And so you have to kind of find what gets that audience excited about that track. And it's so different across like all the different genres, the different audiences. I mean, it's just very different. I think TikTok is the one that sort of stands out right now, but it's not all about TikTok. And TikTok comes and goes. Like it can be one track in one day and it's dead tomorrow, right? And so it's kind of like that would be one thing where I would say like, oh my God, something just like burst into flames. We need to like we need to manage this kind of overnight. But it's really about cultivating those fans and having them exist for months and years and building up the number of followers so that by the time the new track is coming, there's an audience that's excited to hear it. And those are the moments that the editors are looking out for every single day. I mean, a fire that burns is like, once here, once there, but there's thousands of tracks being released each week. And I think seeing what's unique about them, why people are going to care about that one song, and then finding that audience for them is what really excites our teams, right? It's there's certain cultural moments that you have to just react to, but I think overwhelmingly it's about like finding a home for each one.
Yeah. So makes sense. I'm just thinking of some things that I've been able to observe. Like I have a 15-year-old son who listens to nothing but hip hop, but he loves the song "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" You know why? Because it was in Stranger Things.
Right.
Totally. Sync licenses will definitely do that.
Yeah. You talk about something that hit that lifestyle, that demographic, and he and his friends, they love that song. That's like one of the few rock songs that they gravitate to. And on the similar note, we have Motley Crue on our label, And for the trailer for season, I guess it was season 3, they used Home Sweet Home trailer, and that was Netflix played it over and over and over again.
Right.
And that became something. And then last year we also had the Motley Crue movie, The Dirt. We saw, I mean, we really worked on a lot of different levels. Okay, obviously with Netflix for the movie, but Spotify was a great partner. Obviously, you know, other forms of media, but we saw the streaming and the followers go up exponentially. And now, over a year later, still, I mean, more than double of what the streaming habits were, the users, and the demographic went way down, way down. So, and you look, I'm sure the same thing happened to Queen and Elton John over the past couple of years. So we were lucky to be part of that. But I think there are other opportunities, you know, with, you know, like Stranger Things, other lifestyle-centric just shows, events that we can all tie into. Have you had the opportunity, Ian or John, to be a part of any of those? I mean, maybe not to the magnitude of a movie, but you know.
Yeah, on our end, we had recently a pretty interesting TikTok success for our artist Water Parks. So we were one of our biggest records of last year, and a lot of expectations coming into it. The DSPs got really on board. Everything was great. We had some pop radio stuff going on, all for the song that didn't become the biggest song. You know. Right. Meanwhile, in the background, you know, this was 6 to 8 months ago. We were starting to really develop our TikTok approach and like, how are we going to work this into our systems? And, you know, our promo team was saying, oh, we should try this and we should try this. So we tried some things, and interestingly enough, a song that was just an album track ended up being the one that some content creators wanted to use. And so we ran with that. It's a great platform where, you know, that didn't cost us a lot of money or a lot of time. It was something that could happen and didn't take away from anything else. And that song turned out to be the one that connected. And now it surpassed every song, all the song that got played on Hits 1 for 2 months. It surpassed the song that the editors put into all the big playlists. It's the one that went, and then we piled on and did more and more stuff because we saw that it was reacting. That was the first time we saw something so powerful off platform that really, really impacted things. And I would say that, you know, probably for people watching, like, you might say, well, my song probably isn't going to be in Stranger Things, you know. I think you should look for what is that Stranger Things sync to you, you know, as a super early artist. What would get you that excited the same way that Motley Crue might get excited if their song's going to be used in the trailer, and sell that back to the appropriate level of people. You know, we run our own little genre playlists, you know, and people pitch us all the time, and it's not a huge playlist, but it's big enough that it would matter if you're a young band. Our promo team who curates that would look to see, are you a real band? You know, is there something happening? Are you committed to this? And that's just an indicator that meets the moment. You know, you're certainly not going to get on some massive playlist with that, but you'll get on our playlist. And as you grow and grow and grow, those things just need to get bigger. But then it is a movie or a big global TikTok phenomenon or whatever.
Yeah, it's the real people. They're the ones that make those decisions for us. But then when you saw that, you doubled down and you're able to have a lot of success.
And it was great. It brought us multiple things. You know, it brought us some mainstream people from the mainstream side of radio that connected with a more traditional song. And then it brought us all of these new hyper engaged people who were way younger, way more leading edge, who kind of relate to the artist in a different way now. And it brought us a variety of new things. And what I think is amazing is one thing didn't take away from the other. And that is something that I think for people who've been doing this a long time is sort of your instinct, right? Like, if I put this song out, how's it going to ruin this other song? Or, you know, it's not entirely gone, but it's much less of a zero-sum game than it was maybe 10 years ago. And that's exciting. That's where, like, our promo team can come to me and say, hey, I want to try this TikTok thing. And I'm not worried that, like, oh, we get a lot of money invested in radio right now with this other song. Don't mess it up. It's let's try this. And if it works, we'll do that too. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And that's pretty exciting.
I love the fact that none of us are gatekeepers, right? It's just like, it's up to, do people like it? Is it like a moment? Is it something that you know, listeners are going to become fans about that music? And, you know, people got really mad when our editors stopped giving feedback, but ultimately it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what, you know, hundreds of millions of people who have the opportunity to hear it think. And the one single that you didn't think was going to be the hit suddenly becomes the hit. It's like we all just need to be able to react to that and be aware of that and give it the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's not up to us. You know, we do the best we can, but you're right. We have to follow the data, follow the audience, and they'll take us where where we need to go. I don't know, John, did you have an off-platform campaign that was that you wanted to talk about?
It's interesting. I've been super fortunate to been a part of some really big hip hop records that kind of took on a life of their own. But I actually want to talk about a pop record that I worked 3 years ago in the infancy of Musical.ly, pre-TikTok, from an artist named Maggie Lindemann. And this is actually an interesting case study because we had signed her, and she was an influencer who at the time I think had 1.5 million Instagram followers and released a couple of songs on her own. And clearly the lane that she was in was a pop lane. So the way we initially marketed her was as a frontline pop artist. We did all the traditional things that you would do, which is the showcase, the big promo tour, the big pop radio, wine and dine, all that kind of stuff. And she had a lot of fans at the DSPs. And right when we put out that song, it got a lot of attention and a lot of visibility. We did all those things, pardon me, and it bombed. The thing was just a disaster. I think we ran through, I won't say how much, but a lot of money. And I think at that point we were at 6 million streams, and we stopped, and we were trying to figure out like, what would we even do with the artist if all those traditional things didn't work? We found out in that process that this artist had a huge fan at Musical.ly who was dying to interview her. So we're like, well, the record's over. There's no downside in just doing that. And so we did that, and we did the interview on Musical.ly. The week she did it, I think we sold 150 tracks. And again, this is back in the track age, but the week after she sold 3,000 tracks. And we're like, well, that's kind of interesting. So we called a meeting. We had like a big remix moment. What do we do? The whole thing. We just started working with an influencer agency that we had bundled into our company. And we decided to just start the whole thing all over again. And so we went out with a bunch of remixes for her that we made fan engagement exercises. Where like, a fan could submit a photo, you'd be included in the single cover, all this kind of stuff. We had an artist we worked with named Cheat Codes who did a remix of the song. We're like, let's put them all out, because ultimately, who knows what's going to happen? And the song's already failed once. So if we do this, it's kind of, hopefully we get lucky. We put out the 5 remixes, and one of the remixes, which ended up being the Cheat Codes remix, started to just kind of go on its own. And within a month, the thing just exploded. And we got a call from Spotify saying it's the least skipped song on all of Spotify. What's your plan? And we had no plan because it just happened, right? So we all of a sudden rethought our entire way that we market these kinds of records. We never went back to radio, ever. We simply decided to work the record globally and try to break in other territories, ex-North America, where maybe nobody knew who she was and nobody knew who Cheat Codes were. And those territories actually gave it a ton of radio, and cut to a year later, the track had 1 billion streams. So the whole thing was kind of a happy accident, because none of us planned any of this stuff to happen. If we hadn't known that this influencer was a fan of the artist, and we had literally given this influencer 30 minutes to interview her, I'm not even sure we'd even been talking about the artist, right. So it was the first time that I really saw that kind of kaboom level of holy shit, this can completely change the narrative and the architecture behind a record. And so you're always chasing those moments. You're always trying to redo that now in a TikTok world where you've got, these little Nas X records that are just exploding like wildfire. We're fortunate to have one in our system now that's on S-Curve from an artist named Conqueror. And Conqueror has a thing called the Banana Challenge on TikTok. And this thing is generating 700 to 1 million TikTok creates a day now. And, any best laid plans that we have are out the window because we're trying to catch up to the record and help our label partners surround the record all around the world. And these are the best possible problems you could ever have. But they, that record was certainly not planned, and we're just fortunate to just being, to having it and being blessed with having that in our sphere. There have been other records too, Steve. Migos Bad and Bougie is a perfect example, where this was an artist that, had put out many, many singles that worked well at urban radio, but never really left urban and rhythm radio. And we had, some gold singles around there. But the Bad and Bougie moment happened over a period of months, where it took months and months and months and things to happen along the way that led up to the Donald Glover moment on the Golden Globes. And Donald Glover talking about the record on the Golden Globes led to the following day to, I think, 7 million views on YouTube of the song. It was like a holy shit moment. And then the thing became popular culture, But again, we as marketers can try to plan these things all day long. The exciting part of our business will always be when something catches fire, when it's actually not planned. We can pretend to know all the things that we know and be the best marketers in the world. The records that I've been a part of that have exploded, there a lot of times there was no plan. Just, we tripped into the record, and that's what makes the business magical. But now in the streaming era, and the ability for anybody in the world at any time to hear a song with no barrier of entry, a record can literally break out of anywhere in the world, and within a week it can spread like wildfire. I find that incredibly exciting, and that is something that didn't exist a few years ago, and that's a huge value proposition of the medium in itself.
Right. One thing I love about being an indie label is that we can react a little more agile than some of the bigger companies when those things happen. But man, love when they happen. Few and far between, but when they happen, they're amazing. So I think we're probably winding down. But I'd like to ask, not to put everybody on the spot, but maybe 2 things that you would recommend to any of the viewers to, just to help. It's not about getting on the playlist initially. It's about what you do, prior to, and then once it happens. So I guess we could start with Jen, and then.
2 things I would recommend. Number 1, get your music delivered as soon as you can, so that you have as much time to pitch it for playlist potential as possible, and load it up with all of the marketing and drivers and the context for why this song is going to be important as soon as you can. People who release it the last minute don't give it a fighting shot, and it's just really frustrating to not feel like we're in this together, and that we have the ability to start on the right foot with it. So that would be number 1, is to pitch it early. And number 2, build your followers. People who have committed to want to hear your music are like gold. And they're people who will want to hear your music years from now. It will be continued streams, continued plays. And then every time you drop music, your release radar, your Discover Weekly, it's just all of the algorithm, everything will just build, and they will just enable you, empower you to have a real career around your music.
Great. Ian?
I'd say focus on the hard stuff. It's easy to think like, oh, I just haven't got my shot yet. Like, labels and DSPs and everybody involved in the industry are just really amplifiers of whatever you're doing. So if you're trying stuff and it's not connecting, the real hard thing to do is take a look at yourself and your project and decide if it even should exist, or what it could mean to people, or what you're trying to tell the world. And I think that question doesn't get answered often enough, and that's where the real magic happens. If you're doing something that's important to you and important to a small group of people, eventually you will find some level of success if you keep trying things. The rest is up to the universe. Look, all of us have a lot of experience, and we have tons of stories about how the thing we thought was going to happen didn't happen. But in general, it did. Whether it's this song or that song, or this year or next year, it's generally right. And I think if you keep trying and you keep working on your project, you're much more likely to see success. If you're going to focus on, why can't I get on a playlist, or Spotify editors are never going to listen to me, you should just quit right now. That's my advice.
Thank you. All right, John, how about you?
I will say good ideas are really hard. Breaking artists is impossible, right? Focus on granular artist digital development and really look under every part of the hood and make sure that they're connected. Make sure you understand everything there is to know about communicating with your audience, fan acquisition, who your fan of the artists are, and also, and I say this a lot, really focus on best practices as well too, and make that religion, make it rigor. Pin your song to your profile, activate your put together playlists and drive to the follower account. Place your media dollars really, really intelligently and spend time doing those things. So you're really focusing on, the key marketing part of the bell curve and not trying to be all things to all people. Those things are really, really important, and just keep doing that over and over and over until you build an audience up to a point where there are bigger moments. And the other thing too is always look for moments in a campaign that you can directly drive back to streaming. Any moment, whether it's an influencer moment, a press moment, the artist did something funny on a social moment. It could be anything, but don't let those moments pass you by and don't take advantage of them. For rock and alternative acts, this is actually sometimes really difficult because there are less moments than in the pop and hip hop world. Push your artist, and the pandemic has been, I think, super helpful in all this. Push your artist creatively to find their own moments and find their voice and find things about themselves that are interesting. Ultimately, if you collect all those moments together and you build a moment tree, the moment tree becomes your, no pun intended, your link tree in Instagram, and use those things to drive to streaming. I know it sounds super elementary, but those things matter a huge deal.
No, they're like pennies to the dollar. They add up.
They do.
Right?
Yep.
And then you get the impact that you want.
Right.
Great. Well, I think we covered some good ground. So I want to thank everybody. It's great seeing you all. I wish it was in person, but stay safe, stay well, and let's keep having success.